So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi. Let's get just a little bit more volume there. Thank you. So thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I was telling Jason over here that I'm not quite used to the weather. It's changing on me in a way that I can't quite explain. But I am still very happy to be in New England and in Cambridge at this very moment because I think today's session is going to be a really informative one. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Dianetta Jones Creighton. I've been at MIT for August 1st is 10 years. I know, what? Unbelievable. It's really like dog years, so it's like 70 years. MIT, we love it. So in this role, I've been director of the Office of Minority Education, and I'm an associate dean in the Office of Vice Chancellor. And so, of course, our work centers very much around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and today's talk is in that area. So I'm standing before you now to introduce the speaker for our session, who is Dr. Calvin Mackey. He's president and CEO of STEM NOLA, and I'll explain that a little bit later. So Dr. Mackey is an award-winning mentor and inventor and author, a former engineering professor, an internationally renowned speaker, and a successful entrepreneur. And his message as mentor, author, speaker, and entrepreneur continues to transcend race, gender, ethnicity, religion, even time. He is a lifelong resident of New Orleans, Louisiana. That's the NOLA. New Orleans, Louisiana. You with me now, you see it, right? Which happens to be my home state, coincidentally. Dr. Mackey graduated from Morehouse College. He earned a degree in mathematics, his bachelor's in mathematics in 1990. He graduated magna cum laude, and he was a member of Phi Beta Kappa. He simultaneously completed his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech as he was completing his mathematics degree at Morehouse. And then subsequently, he earned his master's and PhDs in engineering, also from Georgia Tech in 1996. So he has a mathematics degree and 3 engineering degrees. So it's not surprising that Tulane University just scooped him right up after he graduated from Georgia Tech, and he was on the faculty there for 12 years before refocusing his career on entrepreneurship, consulting, and professional speaking. And I'm sure he'll talk to you a little bit about the transition from academia to what he's doing today. So he's won numerous awards, including the 2003 Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring. He was also bestowed the highest honor that a graduate of Morehouse College can receive. It's called a Candle in the Dark's Benny Award for his many academic, professional, and entrepreneurial achievements. More recently, he has been recognized by the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation with their Phoenix Award. The Phoenix Award is the highest award presented by the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And this award recognizes individuals whose extraordinary achievements strengthen communities, improve the lives of individuals and families nationally and globally. So he's on a lot of different boards and has received a lot of different appointments, most of which are connected to this work, happen in connection to the hurricanes in Louisiana, Katrina and Rita. So after those hurricanes, he was appointed by Louisiana Governor Kathleen Blanco to a 33-member board of the Louisiana Recovery Authority. In 2009, Louisiana Lieutenant Governor Mitch Landrieu appointed Dr. Mackey to the Louisiana Council on the Social Status of Black Boys and Black Men. That will come up a little bit later. And recently, Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards appointed Dr. Mackey to the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority Board. Presently, Dr. Mackey serves as the president and CEO of the Channel Zero Group, LLC, an educational and professional development consulting company he founded in 1992. And this leads us to STEM NOLA, which is a nonprofit organization founded to expose, inspire, and engage communities about the opportunities in STEM. And since December 2013, STEM NOLA has engaged over 30,000 K through 12 students and their families in hands-on project STEM activities. That's pretty exciting. 30,000, right? Can we give a hand of praise for that? I'm almost done. There's a lot to say. This is not even the whole bio. So Dr. Mackey has written 2 award-winning books, one of which I have here. It's called A View from the Roof, Lessons for Life and Business. He talks about lessons that he's received from his father and how they're applicable to life and business, very inspirational. So if you get a chance, you can get this on Amazon, on all kinds of platforms. Go do that. And then he also wrote a book called Grandma's Hands, Cherished Moments of Faith and Wisdom. Dr. Mackey is a devoted husband. His wife's name is Tracy. He has 2 sons, Miles and Mason. Miles is the oldest, and he is interested in attending MIT. So we may see a Mackey here in the future. Dr. Mackey was originally invited to MIT to speak tonight at the Office of Minority Education's induction ceremony for our newest signature program, and it's a Men of Color initiative called The Standard. Thus, his work with Black men and Black boys and men of color in general is very applicable to the work we're doing here today. But we, of course, wanted this visit to mean more than just this one opportunity to engage with the community. So we thought we would also take advantage of his diverse experiences and backgrounds and expertise in diversity, equity, inclusion, particularly as it relates to STEM. So this afternoon, he will speak to us on the topic STEM IQ, which really focuses on inclusive intelligence, leveraging classroom and campus inclusion for engagement, collaboration, and education. The presentation will address the intentional, deliberate, and proactive acts that increase institutional inclusive intelligence, helping people to feel they belong and that they are uniquely valued. One quote from Dr. Mackey on this work declares, and I know that we'll all agree, if you do not intentionally, deliberately, and proactively include, then you unintentionally exclude. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Calvin Mackey to the stage.
Thank you, Dianetta. It's congratulations on your 10 years. I remember when you got here. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for receiving me. Ed, never in my life I thought I'd be giving a community-based presentation at MIT. So to all the students in the room, I want you to know that dreams do come true. Dianetta, thank you for that introduction. But just to fill in some of the blanks, I did go to Morehouse College and I did achieve all that. But I grew up in a house with no books. My father dropped out of school in 8th grade to pick cotton. My mother went to a state-approved Negro high school. I got an 840 on the SAT that's made me start college in remedial reading, developmental mathematics. I was told I wasn't college material. I went to Morehouse for 3.5 years and got a BS in mathematics and then left and went to Georgia Tech. Coming out of high school, Georgia Tech wouldn't even give me an application based on my test scores. I stayed at Georgia Tech for 8.5 years and got everything Georgia Tech had to offer, including the PhD in mechanical engineering. Then I went on to Tulane, where I was born down the street from Tulane. I remember the street Walmsley, where as a young black male, I couldn't even cross that street. I used to ride my bike, and when I got to Walmsley, I had to turn around. And 8 blocks further down was Tulane. I became the first African-American in the history of the College of Engineering at Tulane University, eventually receiving tenure. But in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, Tulane decided to do an unbelievable thing. In the aftermath of the greatest engineering disaster in the history of a free country called America, Tulane decided to keep the football team and eliminate the engineering program. So after living my dream, after doing things that people said it could not do, after going into hostile environments where it was never inclusive, where I was never embraced, after overcoming that, the rug was snatched from under my feet overnight. And my buddy, who was the football coach, called and he said, Dr. Mackey, who'd ever thought I'd still be here as the football coach and you'll be gone as a tenured faculty member? And I said, maybe the young men in the neighborhoods got it right. He said, what? I said, maybe I should have been doing the wind sprints when I was studying calculus. Because the message that Tulane University sent to a recovering city, and the message that many universities sent to neighborhoods every day, is that you can come to this university and run that rock, dunk that ball, hit that pill, stop and drop it like it's hot, and entertain us. But don't you think about coming to this institution and getting a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degree and saving yourself and your community from the next natural disaster. This thing about inclusiveness and STEM for all and making sure that all of our children and all of our communities got access to the possibilities of the 21st century is about empowering people to put themselves and their communities in a position such that they never have to depend on another man, another woman, another government to do for them what they otherwise can do for themselves. So I lay that out there to let you know that I've lived this experience. I have lived this experience. And people say, Mac, you was at Tulane for 12 years. What happened to your colleagues? I said, I was at Tulane for 12 years, and the day I left, I have not Googled not one name to see where anyone ended up or how things turned out for them. And that speaks to my experience of those 12 years of being in that environment. So when I lost my job at Tulane, the fact that I had 4 STEM degrees allowed me to go out and start an alternative energy company where we took waste streams and built a micro refinery where we could take the waste streams and convert to biofuels and then sell into the bloodstream. Now that's gangster. I could say gangster at MIT, I don't know, I don't know. We got a gangster president. I just want to know where we at, I just want to know. I'm sorry, Donette. I was going to try to be professorial. I was going to try to keep it straight. I tried with all my heart. Now that's gangster. And so since I had 4 STEM degrees, I was able to create a business to take care of me and my family. And that's the power of STEM. That's the power of transformation that we can do for the history of America if we expose all communities to this, because there's genius all over America. And the bottom line is this. We live in a nation that makes sure that before the age of 4, every boy touches a football. We live in a nation that makes sure before the age of 4, every boy touches a basketball, hoping and dreaming and believing that 17, 18 years later, there'll be one of 250 that get drafted and become millionaires. There'll be one of 60 that get drafted and become millionaires. My goal, my vision, my life's work is to bring STEM to every community such that every boy and girl touch STEM before the age of 4, such that they'll be dreaming that 17, 18, 19 years later, they may be one of the 14 million millionaires in the world or one of the 2,750 billionaires in the world, such that then they can go back to their communities and create jobs and economies for people and communities from which they come from. So that's what this collective, how I got to this collective, this inclusive intelligence paradigm. 3 years ago, the National Nuclear Security Agency called me, and I'm like, hey, anytime a security agency calling me, that's a problem. But they said, Mackie, we're working on this thing called inclusive intelligence. And what they believe that is say, hey, there's something called IQ, where there's a test where we can measure individual intelligence. There's something called EQ, where you can measure people's emotional intelligence. And there's, work right here at MIT, Tom Malone, whole group. Used to talk about collective intelligence of group. And now they're talking about the collective intelligence of groups merged with technology. And when you look at it, it's like Google. So Google would take all these different websites, 1 million websites, and there's information and knowledge on all these websites. Then you create an algorithm such that now you get this amazing intelligent answer because they're able to get the intelligence of 1 million different points. So what the research says is that a group has dynamics, and a group has a behavior, and it has dynamics and behaviors and traits that otherwise could be measured. We should be able to not only measure the intelligence of a group, we should be able to alter the intelligence of a group. And that's what this work is about. How do we leverage personal, campus, and inclusion for proper engagement? How do we take this to classrooms where we have teachers who don't look like the kids or from a different culture, and create an environment where in a building we know exactly what the groups should be doing such that everybody feel like they belong. Because at the end of the day, if you don't respect my somebodyness or my uniqueness, I don't feel like I belong, all bets are off the table. And I brought up my personal history because that is my personal history. And the pain that I felt going through that, I've committed to my life to try to make sure that when my eyes close, other people don't have to follow me and go through such an experience. But it's this. So again, as we said before, if we do not intentionally, deliberately, and proactively include, we unintentionally exclude. And that's my challenge to a lot of institutions. They say they want diversity, they say they want inclusion, and I'm saying, what are you intentionally doing? Because I know MIT just raised $1 billion, say they're gonna create a whole school of artificial intelligence. So they're intentional about this thing called artificial intelligence. When we want to solve a problem, we have to be not only intentional about it, we got to be deliberate and proactive, or we intentionally exclude that which we say that we want. We cannot solve the same problem with the thinking that got us into it. And for 25 years of being in this whole STEM apparatus, we've been using the same thinking. For 25 years, I've been going to the same meetings, hearing the same things, people doing the same things, having the same committees and the same subcommittees and the recommittees. And then NSF NSF had like Workforce 2000. Then they had Workforce 2010. They had Workforce 2040. Now they're working on Workforce 2050. And it's the same thing with different statistics. Until we change what we do as scientists and engineers, we know we're not going to get a different result. You can change the narrative all you want. So to just start talking about diversity, we have to have a working definition. This may not be your definition, but in essence, what I'm talking about is a state of fact in the instance of being different, unencumbered by labels like good or bad. It is neither, it's just different. Some of us are just differently abled. My background, from whence I come, when I stepped on Morehouse College campus, I was different than a whole lot of African-American males there. And when I walked at Georgia Tech campus, they were like, whoa, something wrong with you. Nothing was wrong with me, I was just different. I'd had different life experiences. And the funny part about it, my life experiences allowed me to bring perspectives to complex problems in groups that otherwise wouldn't have been there. And the question is, how do we harness that in classrooms? How do we harness that in departments or in universities? How do we harness that in a university overall? And, diversity, not only of thought, but background, disability, ethnicity, campus affiliation, family structures is all. All of this is based on stereotypes. And the stereotype are often unfair and untrue belief that many people have about people or things with a particular characteristics. The problem with stereotypes is that many of us have been socially conditioned to believe certain things about certain people and certain groups that we've had no interaction with. So especially now with, with the power of information and the way information is coming to us, we, in a void, we begin to make things up. So many of us who haven't had these interactive experiences and personal experiences with people in groups, we begin to think things that otherwise not true. And the sad part about it is that informs the decision that we make when we do interact with those groups. And, I want to talk about the neuroscience of the brain. Now, I had a little short video that we're not going to go over. But, the brain is a funny place. The brain taking like 11 million bits of information every second, but it only can process about 40 bits. So the brain has a very efficient way of putting away information. And as the information come in, unconsciously. I believe psychologists say that each and every one of us make 20,000 decisions a day, but 19,995 of them are unconscious decisions. Only about 5 decisions that we make every day is dependent upon, some long thought out, why should I do this and how should I do this, and it impacts our lives. So the brain has to be very efficient in the way of taking information. So when the brain begins to take in information, it either sees it as a fear or it sees it as a reward. And the brain moves away from fear and towards reward. So if my bias, a perception of you is a threat, then my brain gonna respond a certain way. If my perception of you is a friend, I'm gonna respond to you in a certain way. Crazy part about it, I'm deadly afraid of snakes. And literally there are times when I'm walking down the street, I look down, I see a stick, and I might jump 3 feet off the ground. Well, that was 30 pounds ago. I might drop 6 inches off the ground. Now, you're like, oh, a snake. Because in my mind, I've already predisposed myself to responding to a snake that way. We was at the Alligator Fest on Saturday. I'm telling the truth. And now, why I was at the Alligator Fest, that's a different story. And why this guy had a big boa constrictor on his neck, I really don't understand. But I turned and really walked up on that snake, and I just started knocking people down, because for me, that's a fear. And when we start conditioning our brains on what's good, what's bad, then that, that lends itself to unconscious behavior. This Goff model of the brain, and psychologists have gone through, and this guy developed this managing the brain and the mind. And what he said is that this is the way we take in information. This is the lens in which information comes into our brain. There's certain things that we are concerned about as individuals. One thing that we're concerned about as individuals is our status as a human being, our status as an individual. We're concerned about certainty. That's why I had to be certain that was a stake. I didn't have time to think about it. I was certain that was a stake. Autonomy. How does this information relate to my autonomy my uniqueness as an individual? Relatedness. And then fairness. So that's the hierarchy as information come in. First thing we ask, does it question our status? Is it friend or foe? There's a question of my autonomy, friend or foe. And the information is like put away in our brains. But the sad part about it is that's the way the information comes out of our brain, because that's the way it was put in. And really, that's the essence of unconscious bias. The way our brain is wired lends itself to us being biased in our nature. So the real question is, can we, as individuals, reprogram ourselves to not go with our first mind, but think about things in such a way that we are more respectful of people's uniqueness, more respectful of people's belongingness. This slide I like because this is about inner work, life systems, and you've heard the saying that perception is greater than reality. And you see things, you have certain perceptions, so you go a different way. But one thing we know is that perceptions inform emotions, and then emotions inform motivation. So if my perception of you is that you're not bright, then my emotion becomes that, hey, maybe I don't want you in my lab. And then my motivation is to do things such that you don't end up in my lab. If my perception is that this community is not that bright, or this community doesn't have genius in it, or that school doesn't have genius in it, that informs my emotion, thus informs my motivation, such that when I was a professor at Tulane wanted to recruit a diverse group of students. I said, go to the high school where I attended. And they said, well, no, Kelvin, we're not going to that high school. We're going to that high school. And I'm like, that high school got like 10 diverse students. I got a whole school of diverse students. And they said, but, those students are better. I said, but those top 10 kids from that school go to the best universities in the country, including the MIT. But their perception was greatness wasn't over there. And sometimes when we get the results that we are getting as an institution, as groups, it's based on our perceptions. It's not based on facts, not based on statistics, and it's not based in truth. As a matter of fact, many students are here today. If your perception is that a professor is not fair, or your perception is that a professor is just unnecessarily difficult, that gives certain rise to you. And that perception may come from you at night talking to your friends. When you get ready to register for a class, you go to your little group, and they say, don't take him. Whatever you do, don't take him. Whatever you do, don't go to that university. I just had a conversation with somebody, and they said somebody told them. So we allow people to talk us out of our possibilities because the information we receive create a perception that give rise to emotion that otherwise change our motivation. That's true at the professional level, too. Our brains are wired for efficiency and speed, as I was telling you. So the basic wiring of the brain can work against us in communicating effectively across differences. And that's what this thing is about. How do we respect people's differences? I like telling my story because I've always been a different one. Ed, when I go to the Society of Black Engineers, everybody be like, who let him in? I'm a PhD doing this type of work. So when I go to other places, they're like, he shouldn't be in here. So the question is, how do you thrive and be different at the same time and belong? My whole life, I just wanted to have my feet in two different worlds, this technical world and then my community. And hopefully I can bridge some type of solution such that my community and the technical world can see each other on the same plane rather than seeing each other as the them in us. Because if we can see each other on the same plane, now we create a pathway to go back and forth. More than likely, when we start talking about biases, there's about 3 different types of biases. Social biases that create silos and limit our potentials is the like me bias, especially in technical areas. Most professors are trying to recruit someone that reminds them of themselves, someone they can mold like them, and then produce themselves. Even in, I was a professor, so that would make me doing this work different, because I've been in there before. And you start talking about your professional lineages. That's her student, his student, who studied with him, who studied with her, who studied with her. So a lot of times people are in a business not with giving you and helping you achieve your dream. They're in a business of fulfilling their own dream. So when I was a graduate student, I was a research engineer, and when I say I wanted to do this, everybody like, don't do that. And the funny part about it, if I'd have done everything people told me not to do, when I lost my job at Tulane, me and my family would have been out on the street. Many things may catch your eyes, but very few things catch your heart. Students pursue those things. That's what diversity and inclusion is about. How do we take you and help you become the best of who you want to be, not the best of who we want you to be? I have a lot of friends who are the best of their profession and very unhappy in their somebodyness. Because for 30 years, they say, if I do this, I do this, I do this, I can become the president of a university. Then when they were the president of a university, they really forgot what it was they got into this thing to do in the first place. So when I lost my job at Tulane, people said, Calvin, how could that be? I said, I went and talked to my pastor. My pastor said, the only thing God did for you is that which you didn't have the courage to do for yourself. Now I hung up on him. Bam! I got 8 people living in my house, man. I done lost my job. That's a true story. But I've never been more fulfilled. And I wonder if I had not lost that job, would I still be in spaces trying to put square pegs in a circle, begging people for acceptance when the system is not even set up to accept me? Oh, I'm sorry. So with these biases, you got the like me bias. That's what I was talking about. We get caught up in this like me. A lot of times when we're doing admissions, and a lot of times we wonder, is she MIT standards? Could they make it here? But what lenses are we looking through? Confirmation bias. Now we live in a society where you can get up in the morning and listen to a radio station and make you think what you believe is true. You can go to work and turn on your little podcast and listen to people telling you what you believe is true. You can drive home, listen to the radio. You can actually live a whole day, year in America and only get confirmation information regardless of how wrong it is. And then as soon as somebody challenges what you think you know with a fact, you lose your mind. I believe when the internet first came about, they wrote a book and it was called Cocooning. How people's gonna be able to cocoon, really separate themselves from reality and create their own alter reality and then really believe it and get mad when other people don't believe it. Welcome to America. Confirmation bias. And then broken window bias. And it's confirmation bias. A lot of times when diverse people come into groups and groups get very diverse, these are the two things that's really a challenge because you're not like the people in a group. And then due to your diversity or your diverse background and experiences, you're not confirming what they're saying. Because I'm not going to agree with that, and that's against me. That was the issue I had at Tulane. You telling me genius is not where I'm from. And so, so maybe I don't belong here. And then broken window bias, where we believe that when we look at the environment, environmental bias, we just look and we drive through a neighborhood and we see something a certain way that informs us that the people, that's the core essence of the people, because the physical condition of that environment is a certain way. Inclusion. We define inclusion as a culture that connects students, parents, and the faculty to the school and encourage collaboration, flexibility, and fairness, and leverages diversity throughout the organization so that all individuals are able to participate in an educational experience and reach their full potential. And what I should have put in there is, and also to be heard. There's two important aspects of inclusion, is uniqueness and belongingness. Uniqueness and belong. The example I use and always use is like the hand. Booker T. Washington said we're separate as the finger, but we're as whole as the hand. But this thumb is it's a different little thing right here. It's a different little digit. And I'm a Saints fan, and Drew Brees hurt his thumb. Now we realize how important the thumb is to football. But the bottom line is that we have to understand that in a group, we're as different as the fingers, but we're as whole as the hand. And if we accept everybody as they are, we accept their uniqueness and bring in who they are and their belongingness, that is the hand. And that is very powerful. But if you got a group and we don't respect the uniqueness of one of these digits, then there's going to be things that we cannot accomplish. That's been proven over and over and over again. Drew Brees can't throw that football. We're still going to the Super Bowl. Black and gold. Who that? I'm sorry down there. I'm so sorry. Two important aspects of inclusion. So you can have high value and uniqueness, low value and uniqueness, low belongingness, and high belongingness. So when we look at high value and uniqueness and high belongingness, that's inclusion, where individuals are treated as an insider and allowed and encouraged to retain uniqueness within the group. Can we operate as a group without me becoming something else? Can we operate and do things and accomplish things without me giving up part of who I am to fit in? Because see, that's assimilation. Assimilation is that you accept me, but you don't accept my uniqueness. So that's an individual. Individuals are treated as an insider in a work group when they conform to organization and dominant cultural norms and downplay their uniqueness. So now I got to give up who I am just so everybody else can feel comfortable. And I tried that as a professor. My first 2 years, and really my second year as a professor, I think I was clinically depressed because I don't even remember it. But my third year, I said, to hell with everybody, and I'm going to be me. And when I decided to be me, my productivity took off because I really thought I had been trained that I needed to assimilate. Now, I want to go to this thing called exclusion because exclusion is low value uniqueness and low belongingness. Exclusion is individuals are not treated as an organization insider with unique value in the work group, but there are other employees in groups that are insiders. You just there. I'll never forget after I got tenure, I stopped going to faculty meetings. And the chair said, Kelvin, we missed you in the faculty meetings. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, y'all been running this department great for 7 years without me. I think you can continue that job. I felt totally excluded. Totally excluded. And there are people that exist like that right now on this campus, not only as students, but as staff members, as faculty, and probably even as administrators. And why I talk about exclusion? Because exclusion is real. And this is the social and physical pain that produced, this is a chart that shows the social and physical pain produced by similar brain responses. You know, if somebody hit you on the knee, bam, that hurts. And they did a study, and they showed how the brain, what happened in the brain, what part of the brain was activated with that pain. They did the same study to show that when people are in environments where they're excluded or are excluded, the pain that they feel is reminiscent to even being hit. So some people just think that when you're excluded, you're just over there in the corner. No, you're over there in the corner in pain. And the pain is real. And we live in a society that doesn't respect pain that otherwise cannot be seen. And we wonder why people just walk away in the middle of the night, why students don't decide to come back, why graduate students say, you know what, that's enough for me. Because the pain is real. And for 12 years as a faculty member, at Georgia Tech was pretty much mitigated because we had created a tribe that we can plug into that helped us deal with it, helped me deal with it. But even as a professor at Tulane, and I saw this as a professor at Tulane, in 12 years at Tulane, I taught 14 black kids. So I'm talking about kids who otherwise didn't feel included in this institution, you know, where 50% of the kids came from households of $50,000 or more. When kids was going on vacations and after spring break, they had to come back and they had to go work. And they had to sit there and listen to other people's stories. And the professors, you know, would make a big thing out of where people went on trips. And you sitting there going, you know, I was at McDonald's. Hope nobody asked me where I did over the spring break. And then, when the professors or the staff is not properly trained to include people and bring people in, that pain becomes real over time. So the inclusive intelligence is the intentional, deliberate, and proactive acts that increase work groups' intelligence by making people feel that they belong and they are uniquely valued. And this is not play, touchy, feel. So when I started talking, when I did this work came out of work I did with the National Nuclear Security Agency. We developed this model and then went out and trained the 1,800 employees of the National Nuclear Security Agency. Because many of the workers, in this field were highly trained, but there were people from the urban areas, there's people from rural areas, there's people that's well educated, there was technicians, and what we had to do was try to reduce conflict and get these people to work together and live together, produce a better outcome, i.e. a nuclear weapon. So, making sure people are valued is the thing. So, everything we want, we want change, we want achievement. Everything we want is about change and achievement. My theory is that to get to something called change, we got to go down a street called hope, because most people are in despair. See, achievement is a head thing. Hope is a heart thing. So when you look at environments where people belong and where people are uniquely valued, it deals with the head and the heart. We understand that there's an issue with the heart, so we have to make sure that you're hopeful so that you can achieve. If you come to MIT and you lose hope, I don't care how smart you are, you're not going to achieve. And I'll never forget a young lady came into my office at Tulane, and she said, Dr. Mackey, I used to be smart, but now I got a 2.1 GPA. I said, we need to go back to that day when you got dumb, because that was a very important day in your life. My point to her was, if you were smart last year, you're smart now with that 2.1. We need to understand what's going on with you from a heart perspective or an environmental perspective, such that you can feel a certain way about yourself, that we can get you back to where you need to be. So we have to understand that everybody is not in this hopeful stage, even though they come from the best institution, they got the grades, got the SAT scores. They did great undergraduate research. They may come here and still be in despair. Now, this is where universities, and especially education as a whole, is losing it. We're talking about learning and performance. We believe that if you're not performing, then you're not learning. And we believe that if you learned, then you really performed, without realizing that this thing is really based on this thing called relationships. It's based on relationships. And football coaches understand it. That's why the NCAA allows football coaches now to take the scholarship from a player. It could be a blue chips player, and they come play for the coach. And if the coach doesn't have a great relationship with that coach knows that player's not going to perform at the optimum level, so they allow them to take the scholarship. But we bring students into environments, and we know if you look at their research background, or you look at their SAT scores, look at their achievements, they come into this environment and they're not performing, and then we start wondering about whether they really qualified, without ever asking a question, could it be the environment? Could it just be the environment? Could we be doing a better job to make people feel valued and belong, such that now they believe they're a part of something, such that they work their butts off to produce their optimum result? Now, in real estate, the answer is, if you want to be successful in real estate, it's location, location, location. If you want to be successful in a relationship, it's communication, communication, communication. I hate for you to go to Facebook and look at your boyfriend's little relationship tag and they say complicated. Like, what? When you haven't heard from somebody in 2 weeks, y'all got problems. Girl, I wonder why he ain't calling me. I know why he ain't calling you. But communication, right? And this is where it breaks down. Right? Everybody doesn't communicate. Everyone doesn't communicate the same way. And for my electrical engineering people in the room, there's a loop, a communication loop. And in the communication loop, there's a sender, a message, a channel, and a receiver. When we start talking about diversity, and we start talking about belongingness, and we start talking about inclusionness, we don't bring all that into play. And for communication to be optimal, the sender has to be authentic and credible. I ain't saying you got to be like me. I ain't saying you got to be the same gender as me. I ain't saying you have to come up in a hood like me. I am saying you have to be authentic about whether or not you care about me and whether you want to see me achieve. And you got to be credible about that. You can be hard and difficult, But if you're authentic and credible, my PhD advisor was Dr. Carolyn Myers. And she talked to me one day in a way I still can't get over 30 years later. But I knew it was coming from a place of caring. And I knew what she was telling me in my heart was the truth. And if I didn't do what I was supposed to do, I was just going to be a bum on the street. And I went in that lab and I worked like I'd never worked before. She never questioned whether or not I could do the work. She challenged me to be better. And I responded because I knew she was authentic and credible. The message has to be concise, relevant, and specific. So when you have these people coming from different backgrounds, we got to work on the messaging. We have to work on the message. I never forget a system dynamics class. Professor said I had done something wrong. I knew I had done it right. He said it in a certain way. I got up like, so we're going to handle this like gentlemen, or we're going to handle this like some gangster? Because the way you're talking to me, sometimes we just don't, the message is not right. The message has to be concise, relevant, and specific. So I'm saying on the sender's behalf, there's some work to be done. It's not all about the students. The channel got to be varied and cleared. I had a professor say, I'd never be on social media. And I said, that's why you're a dinosaur, and you're going to die with the television. I said it, I meant it, and I'm here to represent it. We got to bring people into the 21st century dragging, crying and dragging. Now, the most important of this, before I move on, is that the receiver has to be accessible, targeted, and more importantly, missions director understood. The receiver has to be understood. How are you going to create an inclusive environment where everyone is valued when we don't even understand the receiver who we say we're sending a message to? In our hierarchy and our arrogance, it's all about the sender and what he or she want or what he or she believe, and either you're going to conform to it or maybe this ain't the place for you. And places that still have that mentality, they're going to get their lunch eaten in the 21st century because students are going to begin to walk with their feet. Professors are going to begin to walk with their feet. They're going to say, look, you may be number one, but this ain't the place for me. Cross-cultural communications. Often because of our diverse backgrounds, we miscommunicate and misinterpret a message or action simply because we communicate differently. How do we communicate differently? There are things called high context communities and low context communities, and most cultures fall within one of these two categories as it relates to communication and interactions. High context communities deal with more relationships, trust, interpersonal interactions, where low-text communities are very explicit, very verbal, and very to the point. When we start talking about diverse communities and interactions and accepting people as they are, this is usually where we fail, because we fail on these verbal cues. Many of my interactions with my colleagues, it was that they were from a low-context communities or cultures, and I was from a high-context community or culture. High-context community or cultural relationship is very important. What I just told you about Dr. Myers, she was from a high-context community. So therefore, we had a relationship such that she can talk to me like that. Many of the interactions between young men and police on the street is that many of the police are low context. The young men are high context. So for the police to say stop and for me to say stop, that's two different things. That's why even in urban schools, when you go to many urban schools, they may have a leader of one ethnicity, but they usually have the same ethnicity as the disciplinarian of the student, because that disciplinarian has the same communication context. But I'm saying we can't depend on that. We have to be aware enough, and EQ is huge now in self-awareness, that we're aware of other people such that we have to code shift to be able to relate to them where they are if we want this thing to change. And that's the assumption I'm making. Now, getting to the conclusion in the work that we did was that we came up, the National Nuclear Security Agency came up with this whole thing of the new IQ, inclusive intelligence. And they talked about group smarts are more important than individual smarts. All of us are in STEM, so everybody look at our individual intelligence. But the simple problems are solved. In the 21st century, the only problems you're going to work on are very complex problems. And very complex problems can only be solved by a group of people, not an individual. And I'll give you an example about how group intelligence is trumps homogeneous intelligence. We was in the aftermath of Katrina, And my family lost 29 houses in the aftermath of Katrina. I had 8 people living in my house. My dad was diagnosed with lung cancer the week before Hurricane Katrina. He's supposed to start his training the day of Hurricane Katrina, his cancer treatment the day of Hurricane Katrina. Took us 6 weeks to get him back in the system. After 6 weeks, they couldn't re-diagnose him because all the records had been lost. Took us 2 more weeks to get him re-diagnosed when we finally found a hospital that could take him in. By the time we re-diagnosed him, the cancer had spread to all over his body. This big, beautiful man who dropped out of school in 8th grade to pick cotton, who started a company with a ladder on his car in the aftermath of Hurricane Betsy in 1965, started his own business. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, he lost his business, he lost his dream house, and eventually he lost his life. And I understand the transformative power of a STEM education because he was living in my house with my other brothers and sisters. And since I had a STEM education, I was able to go out and create businesses to pay for all of us. But the governor appointed me to the Louisiana Recovery Authority. I'll never forget sitting there. And there were people still stuck in their houses. And they were like, look, I'm on Caffin and Tupelo. Come get me. And we had the Coast Guard. We had the whole backing of the United States government. We had the best boats you have. We had the best solenoid you could find. We had very intelligent people. And they would go out and they say, we can't find them. And we're like, they're right down the corner of Caffin and Tupelo. They say, we can't find them. And I'm sitting there laughing because these people was brilliant. They had all the technology. They had all the resources, but they had the wrong people in the boat. They had the wrong people in the boat. They had nobody in the boat who understood the topography in the neighborhoods that they were searching. And do I believe people died because of that? Yes. And another crazy example, we're sitting around a table. We got 30,000 people on the streets. We ship people all across the country. Now, this is America. Y'all might be too young to remember. We separated mamas and babies, put people on planes, shipped them all around the country. We even shipped people to Utah. Y'all don't get that joke. So they were sitting there, man. They were sitting there, and they were like, we got to get these people money. We have to get them money. And they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to wire $2,000 to everybody's bank account. Then wherever they're at, they can get the money. Yes, Mackie, if they had bank accounts, they wouldn't have been on the street. Group intelligence. Having the right people in the room and respecting the intelligence each one of us has to offer. So, at the National Nuclear Security Agency, what they did was that they had a perception scan where they gave these employees a survey. And out of these surveys, they were able, out of the survey of like 100 questions, they made sure 20 of the questions was around behaviors. And out of those 20 behaviors, they can be grouped into what we call 5 habits, or really 5 behaviors. And you look at these 5 behaviors, if you can measure these 5 behaviors and then get a score on these behaviors, that'll let you know whether or not your group or your organization is more inclusive based on how people respond to their perception to these behaviors. And these 5 behaviors that we can measure is what we call in the new inclusive intelligence or inclusive environment. These 5 habits or these 5 behaviors at its core is fairness. I know some people have an issue with fairness, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute. You know, when people say they're fair, that's really coming from their lens. Openness, the ability to be free of a closed mind. Can you be receptive and open to a different idea? Because if I'm different and I'm in that room, that's why I was afraid to raise my hand. I was afraid to raise my hand. Because I don't know if these people was receptive to somebody saying something different. Cooperativeness, the ability to work together and act willing for a common purpose of benefit. Do we make sure that everybody is pulled into the group? Supportiveness, the ability to constructively help others. And then if you're fair, open, cooperative, and supportive, an inclusive environment is an empowering environment. The only thing we want for every student on every campus is to feel empowered. Young lady, what we're talking about is self-agency. When you feel empowered, then you understand, know, and believe that you can save yourself. That's what empowering is. And do everybody feel empowered in the organization? Does everybody feel empowered on the campus? Like I am part of something bigger than me, and it believes in me, and I believe in its mission. This is the perception scan that we use with educational institutions now. We're helping them come up with their own questions, how they shape their questions so that they can do their own surveys. And at the end of the day, they can determine whether or not the campus is feeling inclusive. What is necessary to change a person is to change his or her awareness of him or herself. When I work with students down there, that's the only thing I'm trying to get them to. If I can get them to understand and become aware of themselves, who they are, where they are, then we can get them to change to be who they need to be. People change for one of three reasons. They change, one, because they're given enough. Two, they change because they learn enough. Or three, they change because they hurt enough. I don't want anybody to have to learn or change again because of the hurt and the pain. You shouldn't have to, you don't do what you're doing to come to an institution to experience pain. That's where we have to get to. Your small actions, your work, and your circle of influence can create, over time, a big impact on your organization. This is like the trim tab belief that one person can do something very small that can cause a change, ripple change throughout an entire organization. I was at Tulane. Something happened. I responded a certain way. My colleagues didn't like it, but it changed the dynamics for students in our department. It's one little thing. And sometimes I was talking to professors last night, and sometimes as professors don't even feel empowered to challenge the situation of the environment, of the culture, out of fear of retribution, such that if they do make that one little step, it might change the direction of the whole institution. Motivation gets you started. Habit is what gets you going. And that's what we believe. Habits sustain performance culture. If we can take these 5 behaviors and make them habits. Inclusive intelligence is about taking individual behaviors, looking at them collectively, getting them moving in one direction such that the environment becomes inclusive for everyone. And again, that takes, I was talking to Ed last night, that takes time. But if you don't start, you definitely will never get there. So the new IQ, inclusive intelligence, is really based on these 5 habits or behaviors, what we're calling the new leadership paradigm. The 5 inclusive habits are like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're fair, and fairness that's the beginning. If you're fair, then we can go to the next step. You can talk to people right now and say, look, we fair. We do it the same thing for everybody. I said, but everybody's not the same. That's how I was able to go through a whole system that said I wasn't qualified and got the highest degree that the system had to offer. Because they was measuring me based on other people, not on what I had to bring to the table. Openness. Is the system open enough such that people can be heard and be themselves? Is the system one such that we are cooperative, such that we can work together, even though we're different, such that we can get a better result? And then is it supportive? Is it supportive of you being different, regardless of your differentness? And when all that happens, that's when you get an empowering organization, an empowering group, but more importantly, you get individuals that feel empowered. In conclusion, the challenge is that now we go in organizations and we see certain people that are really empowered. And you're sitting there going, one day I wish I can behave like that. One day I wish I can say what I would like, what I feel. One day I wish I can raise my hand and say what I believe. But since I don't feel empowered, since it's not a supportive environment, since they've never cooperated with me, it doesn't feel open to my opinion, how can I say it's fair? And institutions that tell you, we've done everything we can do to be fair. I say, ask the people. If you ask the ask the receivers. Go to the receivers and ask them. And if they say it's not fair, then you have not done enough. Again, if we do not intentionally, deliberately, and proactively include MIT, we unintentionally exclude. In the past, I believe, young lady, that it was intentional. But now I believe in everybody's intentions. When I sit down with administrators, I sit down with CEOs, I sit down with presidents of universities, I'm on the university board, and they say, this is what we want, I say, I believe in your intentions, but now I have to question your actions. And as engineers, as scientists, we know if we want to solve a problem, it takes resources, and resources follow the problem that the institution value. When I go somewhere in the institution and say, this is a problem we want to solve, show me your budget. That's all. That's where we got to start. Because that tells me the value you're placing on this problem. We are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. And I wish you all to be architects of a future that you never even could imagine, because that's the life I'm living. Thank you all for listening. Thank you. Thank you. You good?
So we have some time. Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Can we give him another round of applause? I'm sure that some of you have some questions, so I'd love to be able to give us some time for Q&A. Just raise your hand. I was so sure that some of you had questions.
Yes, miss.
Programs. Wow, I need this. Okay. I guess the question is that I feel like the same people are at the same table all the time doing the same work. And so it gets exhausting when it's constantly the same group of people that has to do it. So I'm just curious to see, like, how are your thoughts in bringing others to the table so that they're also helping us do the work, if that makes sense?
Nina? Hey, where you from, Nina?
This area.
This area.
Born and raised.
So I forgot to tell you, my beautiful wife, Tracy, happens to be a pharmacist, and she believes that I'm ADD and I've never been treated before. So, yeah, I got to move around. And sometimes my passion intimidates people. James Baldwin said, a passion is unfriendly. It's contemptuous of all what is not itself. He said, but a passion must contains a challenge, and it must contains an unspeakable hope. Higher ed has become like hospital with doctors that don't want sick patients. So they go out and they recruit what they believe is the most well patient. I'm so sorry. And then they keep their well patient well for 4 years and then let them go, and then brag about the fact that their well patient didn't get sick. And then they call themselves doctors. And if you look at Latin, I failed that too, but I believe if you look in it, at its base, it says education is about bringing out of darkness and into the light. And higher ed has broken its social compact with the community of taking those that otherwise may not be the most well, but just need a little, you got a little cold, so I'm going to give you a little Zyrtec. And then you can compete. You keep doing the work you're doing. It's not you that's the issue. The issue is the protected class, meaning people like me or professors who people fought for to get in these positions in these institutions, such that we can be protected with tenure, so that we can fight the systems as the system can be better for everybody that's not holding up their end of the bargain. And that's why I don't get invited to the faculty parties. If we're going to talk about collective impact, everybody got to be at the table fighting for the same things. And my heart goes out to people like you, because you're doing the work. I'm not doing the work. You're doing the work. But now we need people on the other side who's not afraid to raise their hand. I hope you caught that analogy. I never raised my hand at Tulane. I sat there for 7 years and I took the beat down. Once I got tenure, I raised my hand and my middle finger too. Oh, I'm sorry. But look, I'm trying to solve a problem. And I got to call what is. So the bottom line is that those of you on the front line, keep doing what you're doing. It's coming upon people like me to speak to the president, to speak to corporate CEOs and challenge them to do more, so that you'll have the resources, and kids and the university have the resources that you can attack those problems. We always put the onus on the people. We don't go to war and put the onus on the soldiers. Now we got to start challenging the generals, the people making the policies, the people making the calls. But the soldiers will never do that because they can't do it. And that's why I didn't go back into the academy. Sometimes when I'm speaking to the president of a university, people be like, we need you on our campus. And I said, look at your president's face. He's like, I need him on my campus like I need a hole in my head. So I'm trying to solve the problem, not a problem. A lot of people are trying to give you resources to solve a problem that doesn't address the problem. So I'm saying with that, like we've done in STEM knowledge that people have talked about creating a career forever. We are now engaging upward of 200 to 300 kids every Saturday. We've created a pipeline, K-12 pipeline, where we have kids showing up doing STEM on Saturdays. Because it's a shame if a kid gets to 9th grade and you're trying to introduce them to STEM, but they knew basketball ever since they was in kindergarten. So we have I was telling them last night, we have a young lady at 4 years old in New Orleans. She was admitted into Mensa. Now she's 10 years old. I went to her parents and I said, I don't care what she wants. I don't care what she wants. And it's not about y'all resources. I'm telling you, I don't care if she want a computer. I don't care if she want a llama. I don't care what she wants. You let me know and she gonna get it. Because she was a boy and ran a 4.5 40 in the first grade, that's what LSU would be doing. But since they don't value her mind, I better go to the next question. So, look, I carry that burden. It's people like me, my ilk, my colleagues, that need to do what we need to do. Because when there's people before us to fought for people like us to be in these positions so that we could create things supposed to be much better than they are now. But too many people comfortable. And I'm talking about people on the other side. I don't even get Christmas gifts from my colleagues. They used to send me Christmas cards, my buddies. Yes?
Amanda?
Yeah, Diana wants to give you the microphone.
We want you to be heard.
Thank you. I love Nina's question. My name's Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
And I use she, her pronouns. And I'm wondering about equitable distribution of labor, kind of like exactly what you were just saying. Do you have, I don't know, examples of institutions that have maybe institutionalized getting folks in your type of position, like you're saying, to do this work, to challenge the authority above them? What does that look like, if you haven't seen it or if you have?
The answer is no. I wish I could say. And that doesn't mean it does not exist, but I've definitely been looking, and I don't see it. And I believe my PhD was in hydrodynamic stability, and we looked, I looked at, how things become unstable, and we used to use perturbation theory. And sometimes you gotta shock the system, you gotta perturb the system to get the system to change. It's like laminar water and it go to turbulent. You could trip that turbulence and make the system become something else. And I'm trying to do that from the outside. And I'm saying I don't see it anywhere. When you would think people would be knocking down my door to come work at their institution. We could create a whole center on this effort. And that's what I'm trying to do as an individual. I say I'm trying to create the Ernst & Young of STEM outreach. Because I don't believe it's in the institution's DNA to deal with these problems at the level that it need to be dealt with. So why can't we charge these universities to solve the problems that they otherwise been wrestling with for 50 years and seem like they don't have a clue about it? Because I'm an engineer, so I got to make assumptions. And my assumption is, if you haven't gotten it right in 50, you know what? Maybe, systems produce the outcomes that they were designed to produce, or we would change those systems. So I'm trying to change the system. I understand that the perturbation called Kelvin Mackey on your problem may cause more turbulence than you would like. I accept that. But I refuse to accept that this perturbation is not needed, because at its end are the lives of our young men and women and people that are different. And that's a solution we have to come up with. I just don't believe it's going to come from college campuses. And I don't believe it's going to come from college campuses because everything is short-term. You got students that are here that's 4 or 5 years. You got faculty that are here, tenured, protected, so they won't change. They're producing all the research and the money, and and they decide, through Senate vote who may the president be. So it's really a conflicted system. But that doesn't mean that we cannot create a solution that will work within that system. I just don't believe the ultimate solution will come out of the system. That's speaking from being in this for 25 years. Okay? Now, if there is one example from a corporate standpoint, I've done a lot with Ernst & Young. The things that Ernst & Young are doing around modified partnerships, how they're more looking at the needs of women and work-life balance, and how women used to have to sacrifice, family or marriage just to become a partner. And the things that they're putting together, they're really struggling with how do we keep our best talent and meet them where they are and create an environment where they still can be productive. But a lot of people, that's not, it's stock prices and how can we get this best return in these 4 years? Question. Bro. Question. Yes, miss.
I'm interested in hearing more about, my name is Denise Phillips, I'm the diversity officer in Aero Astro, and I'm real curious to hear about the perception scan or perceptive scan that you spoke about, and how well does that go over, what kind of pushback, and in terms of the data that you receive from that whole implementation process, and so what are some of the key pieces of that scan?
Well, that scan is the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey with the Office of Personnel Management, give all of their employees every year. So it's institutionalized. So if we institutionalize it and everybody on the campus has to take this survey, it's usually a reactionary thing, right? You have some type of diversity issue, and then the president goes out and hires some diversity company to come in and take some type of audit across the campus. And I'm saying you wouldn't need that audit if it was institutionalized, and at the end of every year, everybody had to take a survey so you can get the climate of the institution every year, such that out of that survey now you've embedded these questions around these 5 behaviors or habits that will give you a sense of your inclusive intelligence. And here's the thing about it. In the federal government, now they can go to departments. They can go to departments. They, on a granular level, when they look at it, they know, boom. One department we were working with had 12 people in it, and it was hell on earth. But it came out in that scan. That's what I mean by being intentional and consistent. It can't be a one-time thing. It got to come from the top. It got to be intentional, and it got to be consistent. If you expect it, you got to inspect it. Come on, MIT, we understand accountability. Every grant we get, NSF saying we want accountability. And I'm saying if this is important, we got to have accountability around it and resources. Yes.
So speaking of surveys.
What year are you?
Sorry?
What year?
I work here.
You work here? Oh, wow. I thought you was a pre-freshman, my bad. Bad.
A lot of people do. But speaking of surveys, my question is, so obviously the surveys go because there's some type of issue, or perceived issue. So when surveys go out and those issues are not apparent on the surveys because of the way people answer questions, would you attribute that to resignation, fear, or just kind of people just accepting things to be the way they are?
So, your premise was the surveys go out because it's in reaction to something. Mm-hmm. That's why we can't have it in reaction to something. We got to make it part and parcel of the standard operation procedure of the university, and you sell it under. This is how we get better. So I made a comment last night, right? This student center. So I just get in trouble, right? But my point is, I go to engineering schools. So I was a professor at Tulane, and I used to go over to the business school because the business school had pictures on the walls, they had carpet on the floor, and on Fridays they had receptions. And they would have chefs, and the chef would be there, carving the turkey, and they'd have wine. And I'm a professor, a grown man with a job, and I got to sneak over there just to get me some wine and cheese. You understand what I'm saying? But you go to engineering school and it look like a jail. I mean, the walls gray. They got pastel colors, look like you being locked up for 25 to life. The professors driving raggedy cars even though they're rich. I mean, So engineering across the country, wondering why more kids not coming in engineering. Well, if I walk into the school of business and I walk into the law school and I come over there, I'm like, I want to live like this. I want to live like this. So there's some buildings around here. I go to college campus. I'm like, hey, this building got to go. I've been coming to this building for like 20 years. They still got gray doors on this building. I'm talking about this building. So my bottom line is that it can't be a reaction. If they would have been taking surveys forever, maybe the kids would have said 10 years ago we need a new student center because the kids are changing. You got it? So again, when I brought up her comment about the audit, when something happened, they do an audit, then you're going to get all of these crazy answers because now the people are fighting against it, going to just answer something crazy to try to mess up the results. I don't get invited to too many places twice. You know, they're like, I got to get it out while I'm here. They're like, don't bring him back next year. Nah, buddy. I'll just be visiting MIT, just riding through in my Uber.
Hi,
Yes, miss.
my name is Omi, and on that, with the preemptive inclusion, what is the beginnings of bias, and how do we counteract that?
What's the beginning? I mean, that's what I talked about, the social conditioning. I mean, just the way the brain is wired and then the social conditioning of the information that people are taking in. Coming up where I came up, I had a perception of people on the other side of town. That's just the way it was. I didn't know any. I wasn't allowed to go over there. They responded to me in a certain way out in public. So I built up a conditioning, a self-defense conditioning that said everybody in that group was like that. And it starts there. I mean, I don't believe it's taught, but people have parents. Parents have been in certain situations, and parents begin to tell their kid things, and then all of a sudden, this little boy believed that girls are not supposed to be engineers. I mean, you know how many parents I talk to, and they say, well, I wasn't good in math, so it's all right that my daughter is not good in math. And they put that seed in the daughter's head. And we tell her, mother, you wasn't good in math because you didn't get the help that you deserved. We're going to make sure that your daughter get everything that she deserves so that she can do what it is that she want to do. So when adults begin to believe that, and they haven't. So why is it when one professor has a bad experience with a woman, then that becomes a perception of all women? When a woman has a bad perception with a male, that doesn't become the perception of all males. We live in a country where the minority is supposed to be protected, because if we allow the majority to run wild, then their perception and their biases would dominate everybody else. And that's what we're fighting. How do we be more inclusive? Not how do we be more like the dominant culture or the dominant white male culture. The question is, how do we create an environment where the white male can be whole as a white male, and I can be whole as a black male, and you can be whole as a woman? But it starts with birth and our experiences, and that's what I talked about, environments. We start talking about relationships. What I've tried to do with my own two kids, give them the broadest experiences that I can give them, including giving them Arab names. Miles Ahmad Mackey, and Mason Amir Mackey, because I say I want y'all to be citizens of the world. And still, when we go to the airport now and we go on trips, for somehow, when they're traveling with me, we get pulled over. And even my son in the 10th grade, he said, Dad, I think it's because of our names. I said, son, you've been intelligent. Question. Oh, you got a question? Oh, you a student?
Yeah.
I'm not going to assume anymore.
Yeah, I'm a
I mean,
sophomore.
you a student at MIT?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I only have a question because I'm pretty sure you've done in your career what I sort of want to do. So I just had the question, how did you transition from your engineering PhD into community-based work? And if at any time in your career, like, how did you battle feelings of being unsure that you were making the right choice?
Ooh, what's your name?
Brian,
Where you from, Brian?
Miami?
Oh, Lord, what's up, Trick Daddy? I'm sorry. Hey, for one, I'm going to give you my number, all right? So you can ever ask me that. It hasn't been easy. I wrote an article in like 1992 for Black Collegian Magazine about how I wanted to develop the human capital instead of the technical. I wanted to develop the human capital for the technological apparatus or whatever. I always had a human-centered base foundation of what I wanted to do. But since I was good in mathematics, I had a degree in mathematics, I never wanted to do theoretical stuff. So they said, Matt, I was taking this class and I solved this problem and the professor lost his mind, right? He's like, you solved it. Why didn't you use integral tables? I said, I didn't even know there was a thing called an integral table. I solved the problem like 6 pages long. So he's like, you're gonna work in my lab. So it's like the kid who threw a rock and drew the rock well. And somebody saw him throwing a rock. So they said, try this baseball. Then he threw the baseball and he drew it well. Then they said, we'll give you some money to come down to school to throw that baseball. So he said, okay, I'll go to school. And he threw the baseball. Then he ended up in the pros and he's throwing baseball. But nobody ever asked him, did he want to throw a baseball? Why he was throwing the rock. You got it? So I just got caught up. They said, you stay in school, we'll give you some more money. Oh, you what? And the girls come in every year, and I can play ball at 2 o'clock every day. So the bottom line is that even when I was in grad school, I used to go out just once a week and do community work because I didn't want to lose touch with the community. And really going to the community once a week, that was my savior. That was where I felt whole, I felt valued, and I felt complete. So I don't even care if it was the barber shop. I'll go hang out in the barber shop for 3 hours to let me know, you know what, I'm all right, because I got to go back over here. And in my professional life, I didn't want to lose that. So the whole time I was doing this PhD thing and doing research, I had this whole parallel work going on to solve these type of problems. And the thing about it, the more and more I did this, the more and more the people over here told me I didn't need to be doing this. And it's the stuff over here that made me whole, that give me my joy, that keep me up all night, that, if I can die and come back, I want to do. And that's why I said focus on the things that catch your heart and not your eyes. Now, there's some things you got to do. My 2 sons, I train them every day. I say, boys, we have to do this. We got to do what we have to do what we want to do. So they know, you want to do that, that's fine. But we got to do what we got to do to get there. And my life is prime example. Because if I hadn't have done that work, that hard work, and that PhD in the tenure, I don't know if I'd be standing here meeting you today. Maybe that was necessary to get here to help you. So don't give up on it. The bottom line is that you got to determine what it is you want to do, and then we get some strategies such that your experiences here will help you do that work. And there'll be a lot of people that say, don't do that. And I'm saying, young man, do the things that bring you joy. Life is too short. And I'm here to help you. But I'm going to put my foot on you. All right? Because we don't accept mediocrity. Whatever we do, we're going to do it at the highest level. And whatever we do, we're going to do it at a level such that hopefully we could change the world. Let me end with this. How many of y'all saw the movie Endgame? Y'all didn't see Endgame? Captain Marvel? Whatever it is, Captain Marvel. Anthony Mackie is my younger brother. The new Captain America. That's my baby brother. Same mama, same daddy, same DNA. That's my younger brother. Look, and young man, I say that to let you know that's what I told him when I wanted him to be an engineer. Because I'm the motivational speaker. I told him, I said, if you don't get in Juilliard or Yale, you go into Morehouse because that's where my money going. Life and death lives in the tongue. And my brother said, man, I might want to be an actor. I said, man, you crazy. The future is this science and technology stuff. You better get you a computer science degree or something so you can take care of yourself. This is the truth. Donetta, no, this is the truth. And he came to me one day in tears. I said, look, okay, here's the deal. My mother had passed away. I said, tell you what. You're going to go to acting school, go. But you ain't going to stand on the corner and be discovered as no next actor. You got to master your craft. Get a copy of my book. For chapter number 1, talk about mastering your craft. I said, if you're going to be an actor, you're going to be the best at it. If I'm working in the community, I'm going to be the best at it. And I'm going to work at it. I'm going to work at it night and day. And nobody's going to be better than you. Now, if you're going to do that, I'll support it, because I told my mom on a dying bed that her last baby, the streets would not have him. And he went to little acting school. And now he's Captain America. And I feel stupid. But my point is, he followed his heart, he followed his gifts, and he worked at it like a dog. Every school he went to, they tried to kick him out. When he went to Juilliard, they said, well, his speech pattern, we don't know. You know, he need to have like a Midwestern speech pattern. I said, well, yeah, he's from the South, and he talked like that, so what do we need to do? You're not going to kick him out. They said, well, you could send him up to some camp in what's upstate New York for the summer. That's where they sent this one and that one, and they come back talking like that, where he's going. You know how much that costs? I didn't ask you that, lady. So follow your dreams, Holmes. I don't know if I can say Holmes. I mean, follow your dreams, young man. Any other questions before we get out of here? Yes. Have y'all enjoyed this? Yes. I have. I needed this. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I needed this. No, really, I say when I need this, and thank you, Donetta, I miss this. And I don't walk away from it, but in my core, I miss this. I miss interacting with you. That's why I've created STEM NOLA. And let me just tell you about STEM NOLA for 1 minute. So we've created STEM NOLA. We believe a high-functioning community is child-centered, adult-governed, elder rule. I don't care what culture you go into. If the community is high-functioning, if you go to the Khan, Ashanti people of South Africa, look at the Jewish community, their standards, their structure, and their strategy. And a high-functioning community is child-centered. Every decision made is made through the lens of what's best for the children. The adults are the people that carry the most weight, and they got to work 40 to 80 hours to free up the elders, such that the elder would have time in the spring season to pour the wisdom, into the kids before they leave this earth. So we've created what we believe is a high-functioning STEM community. That's what I call rethinking STEM outreach. So we focus on K-12 kids. We pay college kids $10 or $15 an hour. And then we surround those college kids with STEM professionals. So any given event, we may have 450 people in a gym, 200 K-12 kids, like 70-something, 100 college kids, and another 50 STEM professionals. We've put over $700,000 in the hands of college kids in the last 6 years just with this one program. We've engaged now 40,000 kids. So I'm doing community work in STEM. Stuff that people told me, that is a problem that needs to be solved. And now the model is not only scalable, transferable, and reproducible, it's now sustainable. We're going to do over $1 million in revenues this year just with this one ecosystem. Now the question becomes, how do we take this ecosystem and lay it over different areas and replicate it such that now we have 1 million kids doing STEM on every Saturday? Now, I don't know about you, but Snoop would say that is gangster. So the bottom line is that what MIT is teaching you is how to solve problems. And you take that and you look at the problem in the world that you want to solve. You don't have to solve the problem that they want you to solve. But now, when we start talking about collective intelligence and collective impact, with the people that you have access to and the resources you have access to here, some of these community problems you could take on. I did a sabbatical at the University of Michigan for a year. And while I was there in 0405, I went and I sat down with the foremost person, in community organizing. I sat down with the foremost person in political organizing. I sat down with the foremost person in advertising and marketing. That's the type of resources you have here. And then you pull that together and you can create something that never existed before. And when you do that in America, you're supposed to be rewarded. Then you have your name on a building. Yes, sir.
Fantastic stuff, Doc. I'm Nkululeko Khumalo, okay, from South Africa. I run an IT company based in Sandton. I really do find interest in the concepts that you're talking about. I think for me as a leader of a small company, I'd like to know, how do we apply some of the principles to improve employee engagement, especially in the small and medium-sized business sector that we're in, because we find that there's high turnover in our business and in the industry that we're in. Thanks.
Well, this whole model comes out of employee engagement and measuring the fact that when employees are not engaged, they usually walk. So again, I got a small company. I got 10 employees. I don't know what you consider small. But literally, I just brought in, I fired myself, right? Because I'm not good at hiring people. So I fired myself. Because if these are the people I hired, something wrong with me. It can't be them. And I was feeling that that's self-awareness. That's self-awareness. Something wrong with me. So I do mission work. And I have to make sure that the people that I hire are aligned with the mission. Not these dollars, but this mission. And the people I was hiring were people most interested in dollars rather than mission. So something in me, when the young man said, how did I make the transition? I didn't get to that. That's one thing I haven't gotten to yet. So I had to bring in a third party to say, help me vet and bring in people that otherwise align to this mission. Now in my company, another one of my employees who've been with me said, one problem is that these people don't know who you are. You go out, you do these talks and you talk about all that, but you don't even do it with your own employees. Maybe if they knew who you are, then maybe they'll respond differently than it's just a job. So again, I'm trying to create an environment of openness where they can come tell me whatever. And I take it, and we keep it moving. But this here is about employee engagement at its core. And then giving people, in IT, they jumping around because, they jump for dollars. I'm just tired. But I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. I don't know if it's equity or whatever. Some type of thing at the end that they can bank on. But the bottom line is that you have to make sure that your culture is one where they feel that it's more than just a job. And that's what I've been trying to do. The people who are still with me is because of the culture. And they see this as, this is a problem. We in this together, and we're trying to solve this. When you're building something, a lot of people don't understand. I just heard somebody and they said, well, you don't have this, you don't have this. I said, maybe you don't understand. We're building something. We got all that. That's you. I'm the janitor, you the janitor. If something needs to be done, we're going to do this. And some people ain't built for that. But the bottom line is that it goes to your culture and what you're trying to get to, but it has to be intentional and consistent. And it has to be intentional, consistent, it has to be practiced, and it got to be practiced by everybody in that culture, including me. So I want my employees to own their stuff. So every Monday when we have our meetings, we have these big events. So every Monday we have these because we want continual improvement. So we have, a call out. It starts with me, and I own my stuff. And that gives everybody the freedom to own their stuff and knowing there won't be retribution for it. Because we're just trying to get better. Now, if you keep making the same stuff, there are going to be some problems. But the bottom line is that it goes back to those 5 behaviors. And then I'll talk to you. All right? Thank you all.